Hey guys, I just thought I would make one more video about the subject I talked about last video. I'll upload it as soon as I can because it'll be a long video again. But I want to make this video now because I don't want to talk about this stuff too much. It bothers me mentally, physically. It scares me to death and makes me very depressed. So I just have to get my mind off of it, or I would literally lose my mind, probably kill myself. It's also one of the reasons I stay gone a lot. I don't sit at home because I can't. But here we go. All right. You know, guys, I've never really cared about getting married. By the way, I'm out here. I'll say real quick before I get started. I'm out here again in this spot. It's warm weather, and where the grocery store is, there's a McDonald's over. I don't know if you can see the arches. Tried to show you. But that's where I'm at. I thought I'd make this video real quick. But, you know, I always said that I didn't want to get married. I wasn't against it when I was younger. I just didn't care anything about it. And I knew I wasn't ready for it. Of course, I wasn't financially able to do it. So that was partly why I didn't get married. And, of course, I look at what I've suffered in my life, and it's a good thing I didn't get married, and it's a good thing I didn't have children, because they would have been messed up, and everything would have, I couldn't have forgiven myself, especially with my kids. If I'd have had children and they had been making sure they're closed, if I, had screwed those kids up, or I wouldn't have beaten the kids, obviously, but I'm talking about if I had messed them up mentally by me not either being there or me being so erratic from the problems I've had, I could never have lived with myself doing that, because I've had a hard enough life, and I'm kind of sometimes resent my father and my mom sometimes. I resent both of them sometimes. So I'm thankful that I never did that to my kids. But, I think of everything I've been through. Autistic, severe OCD that kept me from autism kept me from having any kind of a career. That was why, before I became a Christian, I had no goals in life, because I sucked at everything. I sucked at everything that was important. I sucked at everything that was easy, that most people would consider elementary type stuff. I sucked at all of them. I couldn't do them. I had a hard time. I remember going into the if you've ever done genealogy back years ago, I would go in there and study it, and you would get this microfilm, and you had to put the microfilm, you had to roll it out, and put the microfilm on the little scan thing that would show the census files and all that stuff. I couldn't do it. Like, I'd try, and I'd get it so screwed up, I almost tore it up one time. I thought, God, I don't want to get sued, so I never went back in and did it again. That's an example of what my life's always been like. And, I couldn't play sports. I was too uncoordinated, and I was very weak physically, and I was naturally small. I was not a naturally big person, so, that killed my drive. Well, I pretty much had no goals at that time as a kid. Anybody would ask me, what are you going to do one day? I don't know. Probably nothing. I didn't have any goals. I'd have probably just gotten a crummy job if that had been all that was wrong. Well, I didn't get accepted by people at all, so I quit. I just gave up on people. I got away from society for a long time. I withdrew, and I stayed to myself. I wasn't happy. Wasn't a good thing, but I did it all throughout my youth. I had very few friends. I had about 3 total that I would call friends. Really only one that I'd say was a true friend for a period of time. But I guess you could call them friends. Well, after that, I became a Christian. I was searching for something in my life, trying to find something. I was lost. I was depressed, and I had no point. I was kind of suicidal at that time. My first suicidal tendencies came at bug out here. First suicidal tendencies came at about 14 years old. I wouldn't have done it, but it was definitely the first time to where I just thought, man, I don't really want to be alive anymore. There's really nothing here for me. And then at 15, I became a Christian. I had somebody point me to Christ at the time. I studied, and I became a very serious Christian. I mean, I was serious about it. I went through a little bit of a lapse, and then, buddy, after that, I really focused, and I got baptized. I'm a member. I was a member, and still am, member of what is called the Churches of Christ. So if you don't know what that is, look it up. You can look it up on Wikipedia and type in Restoration Movement if you want to look it up. That'll give you a good idea of what we are and what we believe. But and I believe it's the true church, but I ain't gonna get into that in this video. But I became a serious Christian at that time. That ended adolescence for me. Like all the sports watching I did back then. I was a typical kid, watching sports. I bought sports books because I was not a nerd. Not that I had anything against it. It just wasn't what I did. There was nobody around me that did that here. You didn't have Pokemon. You didn't have all that kind of stuff. And Dungeons and Dragons and all that stuff. And so I was not a nerd. I was not into the nerdy things. But then when that happened, I gave up the sports practically for about a year. And, when you're a kid, a year is a long time. A year, I didn't even watch. Didn't even watch sports. I gave all that up, and I became a serious Christian. I studied the Bible diligently. The first time I'd ever really read any books. Reading was not something that was hard for me, but I was definitely not great at it. But I didn't have a severe, disability in it or anything. I could get up in front of people and read. And I wasn't slow or, like that. So I did that, and then I, of course, delved into the Bible, and it changed my life. I became a very serious Christian, and I really didn't worry about life at that time. I truly believed the world was going to end. I got involved in sort of the rapture, Armageddon stuff, which was silly, but I didn't understand it at the time. And I thought the world's going to end, and then bam. That was when the OCD hit, and it almost drove me crazy. I couldn't read things. I couldn't do anything without having obsessively horrible thoughts. And as a Christian, and you're not supposed to be thinking these things, like I would think of a naked woman and her breasts, like a bare breast. And I wasn't trying to think it. You can look up OCD. It's not like I was some depraved guy watching porn all day. I really didn't do that stuff much. I think I did that every once in a while, and then eventually I stopped completely. But I would do things like that, constantly thinking cuss words, the filthiest of words, and it would spell it out like, it would literally, like I was on a chalkboard, and the chalkboard was slowly, it was torture, man. And if you're somebody trying to live a moral life, it was torture to me. It would be like if you couldn't stand thinking about blood, and all you kept thinking about was blood gushing everywhere, or something like that, like a body exploding or something like that. It was just horrible. And it tormented me. I almost committed suicide because it was so bad. Didn't know what caused it, never knew. So there went the Christian thing. I suffered it, and I kept going to church, and I suffered it for years. Hiding it from people, tried to deal with it. I never had. Every time I'd talk to somebody about it, it's just the devil. He's just tempting you. I can't stop doing it, And now, that was when a couple of years later, after I got out of high school, my senior year was misery. It was that OCD. It was just tormenting me every single day. And I finally got out of school. I wanted to go to college, couldn't get in because I didn't pass all of what is known as the exit exam. And couldn't pass the exit exam in math. I passed everything else but the math part. Well, it was at an 8th grade level. I always struggled with math. I was terrible at math. And social skills were terrible. I mean, it was all of it, And I never passed it. Well, I tried to go to college. That wouldn't let me go. You can't go. Even to a community college. I couldn't do anything, I kept trying to pass the test. I went back several times. I couldn't pass it. I got very discouraged and I quit. I just gave up. I got so depressed. I mean, I went through deep depression at that time. And I can remember I went to a Christian university, which would have costed me $3,000 a semester, it turned out. Just wonderful, right? I remember going there to study that. And I took the philosophy and theology test they gave you. I did so well on it. Now, I was only about 19 years old at the time, and I did so well on it that they actually thought that I had done. They were surprised because I looked so young for my age back then. I looked like I was like 14 years old when I was 19, and they were like, "Have you been to college before?" You know, and I was like, "No, I've never gone," because they were amazed at how smart I was, how knowledgeable I was, because I read all those things in school. Christianity opened everything to me. I wanted to learn everything, and I studied Lincoln. I studied philosophy, Abraham Lincoln I'm talking about. I studied philosophy. I studied U.S. history. I studied everything, and I was very knowledgeable of those things at that time. But I couldn't go because I didn't pass all the tests, and we didn't have the money to go, and I couldn't get the money or funding to go. I might could have. I didn't know as well. The knowledge of that stuff just wasn't as good back then. The internet was still in its infancy. I didn't even have the internet because Mom wouldn't get it back then. Well, I gave up on that idea. I finally went to a community college. I was destined. I'm talking about my college thinking now. Well, after that, I got so discouraged that I just almost gave up, but I went one more time to a community college in my area. I thought, well, let me just do something, right? And I was going to go there. I knew I could get the funding. I could get some help. I didn't know about all the disabilities. I didn't know anything at that time. I didn't even know I was autistic at the time because nobody helped us. Nobody did anything in this area, you know. It was such a small town. Nobody knew anything, and we're all supposed to be normal, and you're all supposed to be okay. But I went to a community college, and I remember they said, I told them I didn't pass all that test. They found that out, and I was like, well, can I come to school here? Oh, yeah, you can go take the classes, but you won't get a degree. Well, then what's the point? Why would I waste my time and my money going and doing that if you're not going to get anything? They're not going to hire you just because you walked in a classroom. And I remember my mom was like, well, you should just do it. And I'm like, oh, for what? Waste my time? And, I was still kind of young back then, too, like 20, 21 years old. And, so I just said, hell with this. And I didn't walk out, but we left that day. And I just gave up on those thoughts. And a year later is when I had the severe insomnia. Could not sleep for about a week or two. Couldn't sleep. Literally could not sleep. Like maybe an hour, maybe. I was so sick. And that was when I went to one doctor. He gave me pills. They didn't work. And I went to another doctor finally. And I remember that's when he gave me Zoloft, 50 milligrams. That was the end of my life. How could I have known? I couldn't have. And I took the 50 milligrams for about 7 years. It took me a year and a half, almost 2 years, to get my sleep right back then. And I will never forget, because my sister was living with me at the time with her boyfriend. Well, anybody that knows about my sister and her life, go back and watch. She's definitely what the manosphere talks about. Well, her and her boyfriend traipsing in at all hours of the night, waking me up because I slept on the couch. I was very terrified about sleeping in the bed. Back then, I never talk about this to anybody. And they'd barge in, bang, wake me up. And I had trouble sleeping until finally she left, and that was when it finally started getting better in about 2004, 2005. And I was like that for a while. My life wasn't great, but I was content for several years, about 3 years. And I remember in the back of my head, I kept thinking, my life wasn't great. There wasn't anything good about it, but I was content. I was okay. And I'll never forget, I thought something bad's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. And it did. That's what happened. It was coming off the medication. I'm not going to talk about that for this video, but and I think I will talk about it for a few minutes. Whatever. Why not? When I decided to come off, I was really ready to start my life. I was 28 years old. I was nearing my 29th birthday. I was 28. It was right after Barack Obama got elected president. It wasn't long after. That's how I remember it. He had just gotten elected. I watched the election and everything. And I can remember because my aunt was sick of with cancer. And I certainly wasn't going to come off the medication or anything. You know, I didn't know anything about withdrawal, which is amazing. Thank God I didn't come off during that time, but because my aunt had a rough death, dying of cancer. Well, she passed away, and I can remember after all that and Obama's election in 2008, I said, well, I need to get off this drug. I need to start my life now. I need to learn how to drive because I never learned how to drive. I was terrified to learn. Whenever I got in the car with my mom, she would drive me crazy. And, you know, going nuts. And I had a wreck one time when I was trying to learn to drive. I may mention that in a video sometime. But I had never learned to drive. I was going to do all that, try to get learn to drive, probably learn to drive, and probably just try to get married maybe one day because my life was a mess. The whole idea of being a minister was gone. That was a dead end. I had done quit church by that point because by then I was having what was known as withdrawal from the medication, even though I was still on it, because I was starting to have the horrible floaters. I was starting to have the severe anxiety and the severe OCD. So I quit going to church. Well, I can remember when I quit, I just decided to cold turkey. You know, I didn't know any better. I didn't even know what drug withdrawal was. I had never drank. I'd never done illegal drugs or anything in my life other than those pills. And I remember when I quit, I thought I'm going to give it about 2 months because I had finally read online, I had the internet by then, that I had read that withdrawal could be about 2 weeks. So I thought, well, I don't want to jump in and try to get a job and I'm all screwed up, you know. And I can remember quitting, and I thought I'll give it about 2 months total, and then I'll start trying to look for stuff, make sure this is all good and everything's cleared out. And bam, I remember within 2 days of quitting, it got so bad. Symptoms were so bad. I had at least 30 symptoms. Mental symptoms, psychological symptoms, extreme fear. I could not calm down. It was like I was in terror all the time. I kept thinking everybody was going to die or everybody was going to leave me. I remember not being able to sleep for days and days at a time. I can remember having horrible teeth pain all over, losing teeth. I remember crying spells for no reason. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. It was nothing. I'd just be sitting there and I'd just, just start crying out of nowhere. It was so bizarre. And it was just, which I didn't know at the time, my nervous system was out of whack. And I, of course, didn't know that. Well, there went that opportunity to do something with my life. Once again, there you go. That took years to get over. I kept getting back on the drug, getting off the drug, because I didn't know about withdrawal. I'd quit. And, of course, what I was doing unknowingly was kindling myself. I, of course, didn't know that. And I would get new symptoms, eye vision problems, having that now, vision problems, emotional problems, severe electrical pains. It was so bad, man. Jaw pain, horrible twitching and jerking. It was, this lasted days and days and weeks and weeks and months and months. It was so horrible. And I finally just stayed off for good, and man, did I suffer. 3 years of hell. And by the 4th year, things had started getting better. But I had lost at least 4 years again. I was about 33 years old. And you kind of get the story of how bad everything's been for me. And now, guys, I worry about... I'll mention it in the next video.